Sorry, Mark. I was particularly interested when you talked about not excluding anyone in the drive to making sure this works actually. And if you put that side by side with the theme, it tells us about having an inclusive growth and how best to sustain them. What other sectors haven't we been looking at that would mean an all-inclusive matter for us in this discourse?
Oh, I mean, if you look at our rebased GDP profile, we've had all kinds of new sectors that have cropped in. So the services sector. You have the arts with Nollywood. I believe that even when you talk about sort of the IT and e-commerce, which is a growing sector, and that whole technology space, which it's huge when you look at the size of Nigeria's population, the potential that we have to leapfrog through technology. Mobile money, for instance, if we actually get that up and running in the same way the East Africans have been able to, you would find that it touches the lives of people in remote parts of this country. And ultimately, the more of the informal sector that we can bring into the formal sector, you would find that the greater capacity we have to grow. Nigeria's GDP, even the fact that it is the largest in the economy, is based on only the formal sector. It actually excludes the informal sector.
It is interesting that you're talking about tapping into technology. Just as a follow-up to his question, you talked about GDP rebasing. Did that also help the banks in any way in terms of looking at new areas they could also finance, even with short-term money?
Oh yes, I think it helped everybody, frankly, in that it actually now showed correctly what is the composition of Nigeria's GDP. So that many banks that were traditionally focused on, the economy, agri, oil and gas, manufacturing, there are other sectors that, we have to understand better, learn more about, engage with, understand the risks associated with that sector, so that we can actually now begin to see how we can partner and lend to that sector and ultimately drive the real growth in the economy.
I'm just a little curious though. Year in, year out, the Nigeria Economic Summit Group has been able to keep the private sector interested, even in areas. We were speaking with the managing director of the NESG yesterday. I hope I'm using the term right. And he was saying something to the effect that at some point it would seem that government interest at some point waned, especially in the years between the summits, as it were. How have you been able to keep the private sector interested in the summit year in, year out?
Yeah, the most important aspect is the economy. If the economy is doing well, I believe that everybody benefits. If the economy is slowing down as it is now, then it's very worrying. And I can assure you that this year there have been various risks that the private sector has faced. The political uncertainty prior to the elections, the downturn in global commodity prices. All of this has impacted business. And ultimately, every business person is charged with growing their business, expanding market share. Information is critical, understanding government policy. So every serious, credible private sector participant will want to participate in a non-partisan professional forum where they can glean insights, meet people, meet policy makers, engage with them, ask questions about things they actually don't understand, and ultimately come away better informed and being able to advise their board and other stakeholders how all of this feeds into their strategy. So I believe that's the main reason why we have been able to continue to attract.
Access to credit is key here. Sorry, okay, again. Access to credit is key here. I'm still thinking about those areas we discovered during the rebasing of our GDP, and we also receive mails, comments, complaints from these people in this sector and how difficult it is for them to have access to credit. With your expertise in the field, how do you think we can really help these ones who cry out sometimes not loud enough for anyone to hear them?
Well, I mean, for Stanbic IBTC, we have key areas where we focus on, across the energy space, power, agriculture. But one segment that we believe is the main driver of growth is the SME space. And that SME cuts across all sectors. So you have small businesses in all the sectors I've mentioned, in services, etc. We believe that there's no silver bullet. It's a combination of things. It's a combination of building the capacity of these SMEs. It is also reducing the cost of doing business. You would find that many of them struggle with having to provide, power to run their services, the lack of infrastructure. Now, if we improve on those services, the amount of money they need to do business reduces. The amount they need to borrow also reduces. It's also important for a savings culture to be built. Okay, and because at the end of the day, they also have to bring in some equity. They have to have some skin in the game. Okay, and a combination of all of this, providing any funding that is available for SMEs, because we do have funds that come from development finance institutions specifically geared towards SMEs. And across the chain, what we have seen also is that SMEs that belong to a value chain, that is, when I say a value chain, in that either they are suppliers to a larger corporation, and they also benefit from support from that larger corporation, actually are better positioned to withstand some of the challenges in running a business. So it's a combination of all of that would help to support that segment and ultimately drive growth.
What would you say to those who, because we heard them say that they don't understand or know the policy thrust of this government at the moment, and so many of them just waiting and watching, and sometimes investors don't wait that long. They want to know how they need to proceed. Will it be mentioned here at any point in time?
I mean, obviously that is one of the reasons why many people are here, to try and understand what is a policy direction. I believe the Vice President yesterday did articulate that in terms of their areas of focus in agriculture, and basically what they ultimately want to achieve, which is to drive development, not only nominal growth, but to ensure that there's an improvement, in the lives of the people. And I believe with the ministers coming on board, a cabinet being formed, we will very soon have greater clarity, around that policy direction.
So what are you hoping that participants will leave here with today at the end of the summit?
The theme of the summit is tough choices. Achieving competitiveness, inclusive growth, and sustainability. And I believe just having that conversation around the tough choices that need to be made has helped both public sector and private sector understand that it's going to be tough either way. We have a tough couple of years ahead of us, but I think what's more important is that there should be clarity around policy direction. There should be a roadmap, because business understands risk. We expect risk. What we don't like is uncertainty. So no matter how bad news is, as long as at least you know this is the news, you can plan towards it. You can find ways of mitigating that risk. So I believe that people will come away from this session, from this summit, with a better understanding of the risks involved, some of the challenges that the government is facing. The reality is that for us to achieve our goals, certain tough choices have to be made regarding how to free up resources to raise the financing that is required to fund various programs, because the money has to come from somewhere. And I believe also that the fact that the summit is coinciding with the budgeting process, some of our conversations here will feed into that process, and hopefully it'll come out with a better qualitative outcome.
All right, Charlotte David-Bora, thank you very much indeed for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Well, Charlotte David-Bora is the Vice Chairman of the Board of NASG and also CEO of Stanbic IBTC. We'll be back in a moment. Join us again.